This is Jupiter Today for the 1st of January 2015. Jupiter Today is a daily podcast focusing attention on the Jupiter system for the purpose of monitoring activity. At 0 hours UTC, the position of Jupiter on the celestial sphere is a right ascension of 9 hours, 36 minutes, 49.2 seconds. And a declination of positive 15 degrees, 7 minutes, 52.4 seconds. The angular separation between Jupiter and the Sun today is 138.464 degrees, and that's 1.09 degrees greater than it was yesterday. The phase angle, which is the angle between the Sun and Earth as seen from Jupiter, is 7.038 degrees, and that's 0.151 degrees less than what it was yesterday. The distance between the Earth and Jupiter today is 679,834,464 kilometers. And that's 1,565,922 kilometers closer than it was yesterday. The Earth continues to orbit the Sun and get ever closer to Jupiter. And there's a relative velocity between Earth and Jupiter of 65,246.75 kilometers per hour. And that's 1,386 kilometers per hour slower than it was yesterday. The central meridian at 0 hours UTC, CM1 56.67 degrees, CM2 352.16 degrees, CM3 250.91 degrees. Io begins the day in quadrant 2, heading west. Europa starts the day in quadrant 4, heading east. Ganymede starts the day in quadrant 4, also heading east. And Callisto spends all day in quadrant 1, heading east. I have a new graphic to try out. Here's 0 hours UTC today. And you can see that Io's in quadrant 2, heading west. Europa and Ganymede are both in quadrant 4, heading east. And Callisto is in quadrant 1, heading east. At 6 hours UTC, Io is transiting Jupiter, moving into quadrant 3, heading west. Europa is behind Jupiter and is now in quadrant 1 and will be in quadrant 1 the rest of the day, heading east. Ganymede is also about to move behind Jupiter. You can see it's in Jupiter's shadow. At 12 hours UTC, Io is in quadrant 3, heading west. Europa's speeding past Ganymede. And there's 1800 hours. Io's passed its western elongation and is now in quadrant 4, heading east. Ganymede heading east, Europa heading east, Callisto heading east. And by 0 hours UTC tomorrow, everybody's still heading east. There were 8 Jupiter satellite events. At 3:19 UTC, Ganymede disappears into the shadow of Jupiter. At 4:01, Europa disappears into the shadow of Jupiter. At 4:28, the shadow of Io ingresses. At 5:16, the transit of Io begins. At 6:45 UTC, the shadow of Io egresses. At 7:33, the transit of Io ends. At 8:31, Europa reappears from behind Jupiter. And at 10:20, Ganymede reappears from behind Jupiter. And there are no satellite mutual events today, so we can go right on to 24 hours of Jupiter sky. We're standing on the equator, just above the clouds, so we can see all the stars. And we're going to watch the sky over the next 24 hours, sped up. We can see at 6 hours UTC that Io is transiting. There's Europa and Ganymede just coming out of Jupiter's shadow. They're moving behind Jupiter from our point of view. There's Io at approximately its greatest western elongation. And now everybody's heading east. The red spot crosses the meridian 3 times today, the first at 2:56, the second at 12:51, and the third at 22:47 UTC. There was one new image on Twitter. And there was some new radio data taken on the 29th of December of 2014. And there were no new papers. So please subscribe. I would enjoy hearing your comments, suggestions, questions. You can send those and your images of Jupiter to the email shown. And until tomorrow, I bid you peace.